Okay, we're once again broadcasting live, and yeah, I think we're okay. Grace was saying that it's not too much and it can be heard. So um, we've got an air mover going on in the background because out here in Oklahoma right now it's getting hot. So we've got a little air going on. So for this session, we're going to talk about odor, but in relation to a vapor treatment system. There's a couple ways you can treat for odor. Um, Both of them are going to be done with deuterium chlorine dioxide, but we're going to differentiate between vapor treatments and then liquid treatments. So we'll handle the vapor treatments in this workshop, and the second workshop we'll come back and do the liquid side of things and kind of discern between them. All right, so for what we're going to go through here, we're going to talk about the importance of the assessment, understanding parts per million, safety, of course, in this case, deuterium powders, cleaning and deodorizing in one step, and then overall efficiency. Okay, so let's start with the assessment. The assessment is the most important part of the job. Okay, because if you miss something, then you haven't gotten rid of the odor, right? If the odor was coming from the HVAC system and our assessment was limited to, what you can see in the house, then we could come back and have a failure, right? A job failure. So what this assessment takes into consideration is all of the interior and unconditioned areas. It allows us to even map out where we're going to do things. I did an assessment with a new customer the other day, and it was 3 levels. So we drew each of the 3 levels on here together. And then after we had done a inspection of the area and seen how we were going to have to use air movement to make sure that we had good distribution of the chlorine dioxide. Once we knew all that, then we used that map to plot out where we were going to put our chlorine dioxide for vapor treatment, so our distribution was proper of the total parts per million that we were making up. It's 3 levels, and I think each level was something like 2,500 square feet. So we were dealing with a lot of cubic volume within that space. Okay, so the assessment here is used to map everything out, understand where your HVAC system's running, understand where your returns and supply is, right? All of that can be just kind of drawn out on here, and now you've got a roadmap to guide you so that you recommend the right services. Because just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of hard floors, carpeting, walls, ceilings, and then the HVAC system itself. So that's at least 5 different areas without really thinking about anything else that we've got to concern ourselves with whenever we go into an assessment. So this, of course, like everything else, is available on WorkDrive to download. This is just the assessment side of it, right, which is tied to the broader set system. So below this is the area where you create your, I can't remember the term right now, but anyway, 2 pages normally, and this is just the assessment part of it. Okay, so let's talk about parts per million. Parts per million is really defined as a 1 part solute in the solvent, in a million parts of solvent, okay? So if we were to define that here, we would say 1 gram of chlorine dioxide in a million grams of water. Okay, so water being our solvent and chlorine dioxide being our solute. Okay, we're kind of going back to high school chemistry now. So that's how you would define parts per million. And then further, that is in every liter of water. For our intents and purposes, in every liter of water. So and a liter is very close to being a quart, so we can use a quart and get away with that as well. All of our formulations for Deuterium are done with the quart in mind, even because that's what we use here in the United States. Okay, so that is parts per million. Let's look at what each of our tabs produces. Tabs and our 2-part kits. So what I've got here is our 4 gram, 20 gram, 100 gram, 525 gram, and 2200 gram kits. And underneath each of those, you're going to see how many total parts per million. Again, in a quart that is going to make. And in this case, the 4 gram is 400 parts per million. So if I needed to make 1 quart of 400 part per million disinfectant, like we were talking about before, just to kind of bring this full circle, then that would require a 4 gram tab to do so, or 4 grams, right? Because we do have the option of 1 gram. And I'm going to open this up for everybody anyway. This is, when you open up any of these, there is the foil bag, right? This might go like on a truck or something like that. And then in it, those are your tabs, okay? So there's double, really triple packaging when you think about the pail that it comes in, and then the foil bag, and then the individual, tear strips themselves. Okay, so that's what that looks like. All right, so this is a good little guide so that you know how much total chlorine dioxide in parts per million you're working with, whether it's to create quarts and or gallons of solution, right? Because if we wanted to use a 20 gram tab to create gallons, well, with 2,000 parts per million, we would know that 5 into 2,000 is 400 parts per million. So that math is pretty easy to do, right? 100 gram tab, 10,000, right? So how many total gallons is that going to produce for us if we needed to? The answer is 25 gallons. It'll make for us, right? So we can go on down through this in the same calculations. But we're here to talk about vapor treatments. And when you get into the 525 gram kits and the 2,200 gram kits, that's where we do most of our work in the vapor treatment work. So what that looks like is, instead of having a Frisbee-sized tablet, right, we've got a part A and a part B, and these get mixed together, okay? So I just want to show everybody, we don't mix these together to begin with, or we would have, it would release a lot of oxygen very quickly if we mix these together all in one bucket of water. So what we do instead is we make a part A solution in one bucket, and then we make a part B solution in another bucket, right? We mix those together for a minute or so they're dissolved, and then we pour one into the other. So then that's our solution, and we don't get any reaction between the two products. All that we get is the formation of chlorine dioxide. Now, if you haven't seen it before, I reserved a little water earlier when I was thinking about this, okay? Just plain water there. And I wanted to show everybody, really because this question came up through the week, and that was, somebody said that a product that they were using did not dissolve very well. It kind of sat on the bottom. I think it was Jimmy Brown. So it sat on the bottom of a bucket, or something he was dissolving into. So I wanted to show you this. This is a 1 gram tab. I'm just going to throw it into our bottle here. Keep getting that wrong, okay? And if you look close, you can see that that is immediately dissolving, okay? So as we speak, that product is making chlorine dioxide for us, and that will be a disinfectant. I don't know how much water is in there, but we'll have at least 400 parts per million, I'm sure, in that bottle by the time that dissolves. And it takes 1 to 2 minutes for the tablets to dissolve. It doesn't take very long at all, but the important takeaway is it self-dissolves. You don't have to stir that up to get it to dissolve. Okay, with chlorine dioxide vapor treatments, it's extremely important that we use the right PPE, because now we're in an environment that's all gas, right? Because a lot of what we're doing is looking at the cubic footage, and as a guideline for everybody, you're always going to be working somewhere between 4 and 8 parts per million per cubic foot. So the average house is about 20,000 cubic feet, give or take. 20,000 times 8, if it were a really bad odor, right, is 160,000 parts per million. Meaning that we would need at least 3 of these kits to do a really heavy like smoke job or something like that in that area. All right. So with that, you're going to want a full face respirator and the multi-gas, multi-vapor cartridge that we spoke of before. And you're going to want a glove that you can handle things with, right? So, while the 4 mil glove is fine, this is not going to tear on you. So you might want to opt for a 9 mil glove, but this is just for handling the contents of this and really nothing more, right? So we're first cutting open these two packages right here, pouring them into about a half a gallon of water apiece, and then pouring that into each other. So there's a total of about a gallon of liquid once all this is dissolved. It's going to look just like that, probably a little brighter than that as well, because you've got a much heavier part per million count in there. It's really going to be a very bright green yellow color once that solution goes together. Okay, but once that solution goes together, you've got all of the chlorine dioxide that you need to mitigate the odor. Except, again, let's go back to the assessment side of things. When we're looking at a home, a business, wherever the odor might be, anything that is soil load, going back to that term, soil load on the surface, buildup of nicotine, buildup from cooking odors sometimes in and around cabinetry and all those sorts of things. If there's a buildup there, you first want to start out with a cleaning protocol. And within your cleaner, let's say you're using grease gobbler to degrease all of those areas, incorporate 400 to 1,200 parts per million of chlorine dioxide, and it's going to mitigate odor on those surfaces as you clean. It's a very efficient way of doing it. One way to think about this, well, I'll wait for that. I'll wait to talk about the cleaning side when we get to the liquid side of things. So we'll stick to the script. Okay, so I just showing you this physically here, but this is what a Deuteron Powder 20 kit looks like. And by the way, if I hadn't mentioned it, we've got various ways to do this, but the most efficient way is that all Deuteron products come in a pail like this. So there's 20 part Bs on one side, and there are 20 part As on this side. Okay, roughly I think $38 per kit. Okay, just to kind of speak about pricing, just so everybody's aware of this. So you want to probably be in the range of $500 to $700 on every first kit that you use, because you've got travel to a property, right? But then you've got to go back there to pick up your materials and things like that at the end of the day or the next day anyway. So you got to kind of plan your costs into that first kit, and then every additional kit you can sell for less than that. A lot of people will have a residential price for those one-time customers, and they'll have a wholesale price for real estate agents, property managers, all those sorts of things that are bringing them a lot of continual odor business. So just kind of an FYI on what I see out there in the field. So we've talked about making chlorine dioxide already. I guess I did get ahead of myself there. The other thing is distributing chlorine dioxide. Okay, there's two elements to good distribution and efficacy with chlorine dioxide. Now, I know we touched on it before, but chlorine dioxide works by disintegration, right? It's not like a quaternary ammonium chloride that works through puncturing or piercing a cell wall. In that case, it's a lot more time-consuming process to do that. But through disintegration, an oxidizer like chlorine dioxide works just by breaking it down. And since odor is a particle, right, that's coming in contact with a neuroreceptor, since odor is a particle, it physically disintegrates or breaks down that odor particle. That's how it's doing what it does. Right? Two things you want to think about: aeration of the solution and then distribution of the solution. So like this system right here is called the Rhino. And this will allow us to put, I believe, 200,000 parts per million into an environment. But what this system lacks is an aeration system. So what you want to do is have an aerator in there. It could be as simple as something used just for aerating fish tanks, right? And what we've learned, because early on, a lot of people were using like a lot of battery operated systems, and they would maybe aerate at a rate of 8 to 10 gallons per hour was the rating on it. Well, as we've spoken with customers over time, we've found that some of the best, most effective jobs are done at a rate of 50 gallons per hour. Those aren't expensive. You're talking about $20 for an aeration unit or something like that. They're not expensive at all. But knowing that we've kind of zoned in on how much air you want to pump into that solution every hour is going to ensure success at the end of the job and complete use of that chlorine dioxide in solution. So kind of your minimum threshold would begin at 50 gallons per hour, and you could go up from there, okay? And then you want to have air movement as well. It could be air movement like the Rhino, which, this has containers in it to contain the chlorine dioxide, and it's blowing it out. Or you can make chlorine dioxide in a 5-gallon pail and use an air mover from your business to move air around. The important thing is that you get good air distribution and that it's equally dispersed throughout an entire property. Any questions about that? No? Grace, any questions over there? Okay, we're good. All right, we'll see you for the next one, and we'll be talking about the liquid side of things. We'll see you then.